Yes, and welcome again, everybody, to another edition of Double Cross Radio, coming to you live from sunny Southern Oregon. It's very hot here today, about 105, I think. It's hot. Tonight we're going to be joined by a special surprise guest. It's kind of the opposite of what happened last week when we had no guests lined up. He's been on our show a couple times, and he's a fascinating man. This is actually the best way to talk to him because he doesn't have 1,000 people coming up to him and distracting him all the time. But his name is Jeff Berwick. He's also known as the Dollar Vigilante. He's an awesome guy, and he's granted us some of his precious time today to be on our show at the last minute because I almost had another show without a guest. And Jeff, thank you for being on, and welcome to Double Cross Radio.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Chuck.
And today I was, as I work I have a new endeavor. I don't know if you know this. I own a liquor store now. Oh boy, I think I was happier when I was retired, but this is kind of a challenge. I'm liking it. But as I was going through my paperwork today, as we're trying to expand into selling beer and wine aside from hard liquor, there's a lot of stuff to do, and there's a lot of government hoops to jump through, and which I'm sure you have heard all those kinds of stories before. But as I was listening to a loop of the Alex Jones show today, and all this news today was pretty upsetting. It made me hard to put a smile on my face. First, the Supreme Court basically made the Congress irrelevant. They made the states, any power the states have, irrelevant. They granted they make almost like a supreme power to the IRS and whoever happens to be the president at the time. And I guess with maybe some of the stuff that's going on later on in the day with the TPP, the president may be able to do whatever he wants, basically. I don't know if there's any power left to anybody but the president and the corporations that fund him anymore.
Yeah, I didn't even hear about the Supreme Court thing. First of all, though, I can hear myself like an echo. Do you have your speakers on, or is that coming through somewhere else?
I do have the speaker on my...
If you can turn it down, it's just hard to talk when you hear yourself for a second later, and you say, you sound like an idiot. Yeah, that's a lot better. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't even hear about the Supreme Court thing. I was...
They upheld...
I just finished writing...
7 states were challenging Obamacare, and they upheld the law, even though they did...
Oh, yes. I did hear about that.
That just basically, the states had good arguments. They didn't answer one single argument. It's like they didn't even read it. They just said, no, this is the law. This is what the intent was. And they rewrote the law that Congress had written so that it would be less ambiguous, I guess, and it kind of made Congress irrelevant.
Yeah, I just finished writing an article, so I was unaware. I saw Obama was gloating about something, but he's always gloating, so I didn't really pay attention. So I guess he was gloating about that. But I was just finishing an article on that, what was it, in South Carolina, the shooting. And that looks like a 100% false flag event, and that happened on June 17th. On June 18th, the NDAA, the what they call it, National Defense Authorization Act, was passed while no one noticed. And then just today, yesterday, as you pointed out, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was passed while everyone around the U.S. is all freaking out about the Confederate flag. It's they got 2 for 1 on this false flag.
Yeah, and I'm going to point out, some of you people might be new listeners. Some of you people have heard Jeff before, and the first time he came on our show, it wasn't the first time I'd heard stuff like this. Like I said, I listened to Alex Jones, but Jeff may be even a little bit more closer to the truth than Alex Jones is. I think, at least financially and economically, he's a little more tuned into what's really happening. And after that show, Jeff, you literally changed my life. That one quote from Harriet Tubman about she freed 1,000 slaves and she could have freed 1,000 more, but they didn't know they were slaves. I could not get that out of my head for months. And it just changed how I thought about everything. And now I'm thinking, well, I got to finish this project of converting the store so I can sell it and get out of this country because it's not going to be a safe place much longer.
Yeah, I see nothing but bad things. I haven't been to the U.S. in nearly a year now, and I said I wasn't going to go anymore. But just today, I got a invite from Andrew Treglia, who's a director, and he's coming out with a new movie, and he's having the red carpet event on. Let me just look this up. It's called Lord of the Freaks, and you have to see the trailer to this. It's just nuts. Like this is the craziest movie I think I've ever seen. It's got every single Hollywood person you've ever known in the movie. And so he sent me an email just today, and he said, "Hey, I'm an anarchist. I've been following you for a long time. I'd like to invite you to my premiere, red carpet premiere of my movie in Los Angeles next week." And he's actually tempting me, but I still don't think I'm going to go. It's just it's too unfree up there. I prefer Mexico. It's the freest country in North America by far. And just seeing what's going on in the U.S. every day now, it's shocking and scary to see how fast they're rolling out this new world order.
Yes, it is, and it's almost hard to catch your breath. It's just like one after another, and then before you can even totally realize how bad one thing is, they've slipped another one past you, and they've got plans for more, folks. We talked about this on a show about a month and a half ago. There's a lot of talk about a cashless society now, and if that doesn't scare me to death, the potential for abuse there is enormous. I mean, you would be, I think, slaves in the deep South had it better off than we will have it in a cashless society. It's just there would be no life.
Well, that's the funny thing about this whole Confederate flag thing is that so many people are talking about, well, that Confederate flag represents slavery, and now we're not slaves anymore. It's very close to being at that point, and now everyone's a slave. They let you have a little bit of freedom. You can kind of choose your job. But you're going to end up paying 30 to 50% a year to your master, which is right now Barack Obama, who actually isn't the master. He's just the puppet who reads off the teleprompters.
It's worse than that, as you've pointed out to us. Got to include the loss of purchasing power of their money.
Oh yeah, they've got everybody at every level right now. And you talked about chipping. I just had to go to the bank here in Mexico because I came back from Europe and I had been using my bank card like crazy and it wore out. And I tried to put it in the bank machine and said it doesn't recognize my chip. And so now I have no money. And so you can just imagine once they have everyone on this, and they do right now, that's the only way most people, unless you have gold, silver, or Bitcoin, you are in the system. And if they don't like what you're doing, and that would be anything freedom related, you're out. And then they've got you. It's amazing. I just started rereading the Bible. I never thought about it too much, but this was written about in the Bible millennia ago. And so there's something at work here, whether it's being played out by these high-level elites who are very occult, of course. They're also into numerology. They're into all kinds of weird, crazy stuff. I don't know if they're playing it out or if this was written or what, but this seems to be going on right now.
It does. There's, of course, one of my favorite parts of the Bible is when Jesus turns the money changers' tables over. That was the only act of violence he ever perpetrated. It was, at least all Christians should note that. This cashless society thing is, aside from being, I think, making life a lot more difficult for ordinary people. Because if you have a babysitter and you got to pay them, I guess there's technical ways you could do it. I mean, if you had Bitcoin, you could transfer money to their wallet or whatever. So I'm sure that there's ways you'll be able to do this in a bank, then transfer from your account to their account. But that doesn't seem to me to be. I don't trust the banks being totally secure. The Bitcoin was mostly secure, and it still had some problems. Cash is pretty secure, but that is only a small problem. The big problem I see is that you're going to have a bank account to get paid for anything. And the bank account is their way of monitoring your whole life. You have no more privacy. It's open there, and they'll have computers flagging you for different things. You're going to have to learn how to write encoded messages so that they won't be able to tell what you're doing, or maybe you could just I don't know. Right now, they arrest people and take all their money for structuring. If their deposits, if they make daily deposits and they're not enough to trigger their sensors or whatever, they think that you're doing that on purpose. They can't imagine that someone would have a business and they don't deposit $10,000 a day. I mean, that's almost every business in America. And
Yeah, there was the example that one guy who had corner store, and for 30 years he would just deposit. He'd wait till he got around, six, seven, 8,000, and then he's like, okay, I better put this in the bank. He did that for like 20 or 30 years. He had his whole life savings in there, which turned out to be around 300,000 or something. And one day the goons, the beast, showed up and said, "No, it looks like you're trying to evade taxes because you never deposit more than 10,000, and that would trigger our systems. So now it's an offense to not deposit more than 10,000.
yeah,
It's getting insane up there."
and it's also we used to have it's kind of it was a legal standard that you are innocent until proven guilty. And now with these other laws, you have to prove your innocence before you can get your money back. You have to. That is not a legal system because you will be bankrupted by trying to prove that you're innocent.
Yeah, it's called civil forfeiture, which has become epidemic in the U.S. I'm from Canada originally. Canada is just a little bit better than the U.S. in some ways, but hardly any anymore. And the Canadian press just last month was warning Canadians not to go to the U.S. because cops will probably steal all their money. It's getting insane.
Well, my my son and his wife are going to do some traveling this summer. I said, don't take very much cash with you because it's at risk. There are highway bandits out there. And they have fast cars with blinking lights, and they have guns and these funny costumes they wear.
And a shiny badge that gives them
Yeah,
extra rights.
yeah, they have the right to shoot down your whole family. So anyway, I'm feeling kind of sad today. I filled up my car with gas on the way home, and the girl we have in Oregon, we're not even free to pump our own gas. But there was the attendant there. She was asking me how my day was going. So I'm kind of sad today. And she goes, "Oh, that's said. What about?" I says, "Well, our country has been conquered, and the new rulers are not playing nice." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, you don't pay attention very much, I see. So I don't think I can explain it to you in the time it's going to take to fill up my tanks. You're just going to have to go out and start doing some work on your own." But and one day you're going to wake up and you're going to say, "How did this happen?" And just remember this conversation, as short as it was, that it's really sad that hardly anybody is aware of what's going on. I would say it's probably less than 2%.
Yeah, something around 1 to 2%. I think there was something also in the Bible again. I'm just getting into the Bible now because I've been figuring all this stuff out. I'm like, they knew about this. Either they knew it was human nature that this always happens, or it was divine, or there's these people who are doing things because of what was written in the Bible. I don't know. But I think there was some sort of thing in the Bible, like you can't save all the people. And that's sort of what I've realized too, because when I first started doing what I'm doing, I was like, I want to save everybody. And I've found out that you can't save probably not even 90% of the people. They don't even want to be saved. They actually enjoy their slavery. And that's what actually makes them so dangerous. That's what makes us the terrorists now for just mentioning, well, maybe I'd like to kind of control something in my own life. And they're like, no, you signed the social contract. It's like, where is that contract? I've been looking for it for years. Um, this mob mentality, this herd mentality is incredibly dangerous. Collectivism is incredibly dangerous. And unfortunately, the U.S. has been going this way for a long time. Not every place, of course, but so many places. And I think it's just going to get worse from here. So, I definitely wish you the best. And I hope you can kind of get your life organized to a point where you survive what's coming, because I have very, very bad predictions for what's coming.
I also I think it's mostly a fear of the unknown, but I know that our financial system is going to collapse, and a lot of people have no idea what they're going to do or how they're going to put food on a table. And a few people will figure out the best way to do it is to take some stuff for other people, and that won't last very long before those people will be wiped out. And then we'll all just be starving together, living in mud huts, and
That's the Agenda 21, the UN objective, essentially. And that's socialism, that's communism. The sort of
Right.
goal is to bring everyone down to the lowest common level. But of course, there's always going to be these elites. So that's what these elites want. They want to get everyone down to basic subsistence levels, and then they want to rule over them and take everything from them.
That's
It's
exactly
crazy.
right. And I'm going to tell you, having a liquor store, you people out there, you do not want to be down there at the lowest common denominator. It is pretty low. It's much worse than slaves endured. Much worse.
Yeah, well, this has been going on in the U.S. for so long now. Like,
Yes,
I think
yes.
Americans are like, aside from North Koreans, the most brainwashed, the most attacked by every level, from the public indoctrination camps, 12 years. It was, I believe it was Lenin who said, if you give me your child for 4 years, then I'll plant a seed that can never be uprooted. In the U.S., it's 12 years now. Then they go home, they turn on the TV. Luckily, a lot of people are turning it off now. There is some positive stuff. We should talk a little bit more positively here. There is an awakening. There is people like you see CNN. Their ratings are like nothing. Larry King left to the Russia propaganda channel, RT, and he said CNN should just show SpongeBob SquarePants cartoons because they'd get more ratings. MSNBC in their prime demographic, the one that everyone wants, from about 24 years old to about 54, I believe, it's about 25,000 people. So I don't know how many people listen to your show, but I know me personally, I have way more people who listen to me than MSNBC. So there's an
I think with
awakening, but it's not at the level of millions and billions yet.
I, I don't think we're up to 25,000 for a live broadcast, but if you some of our best shows with rebroadcasts of podcasts and YouTube stuff, I think we've gone over 10,000 a couple of times. That's just for something a guy doing it out of an office in his house, you know. Yeah, these people have. I probably have maybe $300 or $400 worth of equipment here, and that's it. And these guys have millions and millions of dollars invested in programs that 25,000 people watch. That's
Yeah, well, that's
pathetic.
another real positive is the internet. So, for whatever reason, we now have the internet. Just like the Gutenberg press really saved humanity, in my opinion, from a lot of craziness. We now have the internet for whatever reason. I guess Al Gore created it. Joking about that, but. Yeah, it's a battle right now. It's a total battle. People don't realize it, and some of us are out there fighting it. And I'm not going to stop fighting it. This is a war. The war is on, but I'm not going to do it violently. We can't win through violence, actually, and that's another thing that a lot of Americans will say is, "Well, we've got our guns," and I'm good. I'm glad you have your guns. I'm so glad. The U.S. military right now and what they're doing with Jade Helm, tanks and drones and nuclear bombs. I don't think people like Thomas Jefferson and people like that could have imagined how much when they said the right to bear arms, and the main right to do that was the intention was if your government gets tyrannical, you can just fight back. Well, that's over. They've got everything in that respect. The only way that we can really win now, if we want to win, and if there's enough people who want to win, is through ideas, and that's why your show, Chuck, is so important.
Well, I hope it gets more important, but I just hope that more people start doing what I'm doing. I know that I've learned so much doing this that when I talk to people who are concerned about what's going on, all of a sudden I can connect a lot of dots for them real fast, and they get this look on there like, "Oh my God," uh, and I can tell that they're a short time away from realizing what I realized, but. There are a few other positive things happening. The United States is not the freest place in the world. There are other places where you could probably be more effective than the United States in bringing freedom to humanity, and you still have time to leave here if you want. There's Jeff said Mexico's the freest country in North America, and I believe it. I've been down there. I thought it was wonderful. I love the Mexican culture. I would like to explore more of the country before I find a place I want to live, but there's several places I've been to that I would have no problem living there.
Yeah, I've traveled to about 100 countries, and I would say 50% or more of those were a lot freer than the U.S. And I would also say that the people, it's not like you have to fight you know, everyone to wake them up. In most places, even Mexico, and this is one reason I really like Mexico, is no one likes the government. They hate the government, and you see that all the time. And people will actually go if the cops do anything, they'll go and they'll burn down the police station and kill all the cops. If the mayor does something, they'll hang the mayor. The president can barely go anywhere in this country without essentially being assassinated. Lit his palace on fire in Mexico City a few months ago.
No
So,
kidding.
yeah.
Trying to
Oh, yeah.
burn his house.
Yeah. So the rest of the world isn't quite as they haven't been indoctrinated so much as Americans. And this is funny to say. I know a lot of Americans are going to be listening to this and going, "Oh, he's crazy. This is the land of the free, home of the brave." I haven't seen anything brave in a long time there, and it's definitely not the land of the free. And it's because, I actually feel bad for them because I think all people in general, there's some good people, some bad people, no matter where you go. But I think Americans, they almost live in like a Truman Show because they've got it just locked down. Like, I don't know if they took it from the Nazis or if they taught the Nazis because Preston Bush, of course, Granddaddy Bush was behind financing the Nazis. But I don't know if they took it from them or they're just part of it. But they've just got propaganda down to an art. And even like with this Confederate flag thing. They can whip the public into a frenzy about nothing. Here's a piece of cloth, and it's got some colors on it, and it may or may not represent something. Let's talk about this all week while we pass two or three. I didn't even know about the Supreme Court thing until you told me. So 3 major things in the last week while no one noticed. That doesn't happen in most other places. People are kind of aware of these things and they don't like it. But in the U.S., they've just got them whipped. The public indoctrination camps, that teaches people how not to think critically. What do you learn in school? How to obey, how to memorize, how to repeat the information you're told. By the time you get out of there, you can't even think freely at all. For most people, obviously some do. But they've really got that place just mastered, and it's really sad to see. I still have some hope. But it's not going to be easy, and people just need to wake up, and the sooner they wake up, the better. And, it's like pulling the Band-Aid off. A lot of people just don't want to pull that Band-Aid off. They just want to wait till it falls off on its own. I can guarantee you it's a lot better to pull it off right now. We're in the final end stages of what they're planning. Even this last week, as we pointed out, 3 major, massive anti-freedom things were just rammed through. No one noticed. If that continues much longer, and I'm talking a few months, it's going to get really bad in the U.S.
I don't see any bright spots economically from all the stuff that's happening. TPP is going to ship even more jobs abroad. It's going to make the United States one of the most hated countries that's ever been because they're going to enforce intellectual property laws on every country in the world. They're going to come in with their tanks and jet planes and fighter bombers and tell the people this is you give us our royalties for this, or we're going to take over your country. And what are they going to do? We got the best, we got all that equipment. They're going to force people to use Monsanto's GMO seeds. They're going to force people to spray their crops with Roundup. They're going to force other countries to do a lot of things against their will, just like they're forcing us to do things against our will. And they're going to be a hated entity. And I think it's best to get out and make some friends outside the country before it's going to be impossible to make a friend as an American in any country outside of the U.S.
Well, I'll say this. I've traveled a lot, and I was just in Europe fighting infiltrated Bilderberg in Austria just a couple weeks ago. People don't hate American people. I've never been anywhere. Well, they might dislike some of the culture and style. Sometimes they're a little boisterous or whatever. That's normal, but they don't hate American people. Most people hate the U.S. government. I was just in Germany for the G7 and talking to people on the street, and they so despise the U.S. government. They want to actually link up with Russia right now because they see that as being a much freer, much better, much less violent, much less controlling group to be a part of. Whereas the U.S., of course, is just, they're everywhere. The Ukraine just almost attacking somewhere. They just attacked, I think it was Moldova last week. They're trying to control that country now. People are getting sick of it, but it's not like they hate Americans. Like I would assure you that as a person who's traveled a lot, if you're an American and you're nice and you're not boisterous and not going USA, we're number one. Most people will be like, "Oh, yeah, I like some of the movies that come from there." You know, that people are people, and it's not like they hate Americans. But I'll tell you, the U.S. government is getting very, very, very close to pushing it too far right now, and a lot of people have had enough, and that includes Mexicans as well. They're very tired of it. Always attacking Mexico. What they do with the drug war has nearly ruined this country. It hasn't ruined it completely, but it's caused a lot of problems. Just making things illegal, which is crazy. Just like prohibition, and you just open a liquor store. You can imagine if you were there in 1928, you open a liquor store, and then a year later, all these guys with guns came and said, "No, what you're doing is illegal. Now you're going to be in a cage." That'd be crazy to you. That's the drug war. You have a flower in your pocket called marijuana. Now you're going to jail. Now we're going to ruin your entire life. The U.S. is out of control. It's going to end soon. I don't know how it's going to end. The transition is going to be very messy. The less people that wake up, the messier it's going to get. The more people who wake up, the better it can be. But we're going to see. This is going to be ground zero for the coming craziness that's going to be coming, which I'm predicting starts in September of this year.
I've heard a couple other people say that's when they think things are going to happen. And a few people say it'll happen a couple months later, but they certainly think it's going to begin by September. I think it's going to go pretty fast when it starts. It's really a house of cards. They've lied about all the statistics. There's no unemployment couldn't possibly be 5% when they have a record number of people not working and 50 million people on food stamps. It's just you don't have to do very much research to figure out that that's a lie. There's GDP, which is the most ridiculous economic statistics of all time, is totally dependent on fake money they create out of thin air and just give to the banks at zero interest loans. If we've had negative growth for for I say go to 8 years, maybe 9.
At least 10. I would go so far as to say 20. If you look at the average American family and their real amount of purchasing power, it's around early 1990 levels. So there's really been no growth. There's just been asset bubbles created by the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. So it's even. I guess maybe we were living off our accumulated assets for a while, and we're running out of those. I guess that's why it seems like it's a lot worse to me. But all these statistics and things that they throw out there, they're just lies. They're meant to deceive you. They're meant to hypnotize you, to tell you, oh, it's okay. Your normalcy bias is okay. It's keeping you safe, and that's not the case. Well, Jeff, I don't want to take all your evening. Thank you for coming on tonight. You said you had a half an hour. It's right at a half an hour right now. So you're welcome to stay on if you're having a good time. But
I actually am enjoying this. I'll stay on for at least 10 more minutes.
Okay.
If you want me.
If anybody out there has a call, we have phones open tonight. So if anybody has a question for Jeff, go ahead and call in. But in the meantime, tell us what you got inside Bilderberg. How did you do that? Did you see somebody that you knew and...
It was quite wild. We went to the G7 first, which was in a little town south of Munich, Germany. And I couldn't believe it. We got press passes so easily through friends, people we know. And it was just a giant – there was about thousands of journalists from around the world there to cover the G7. And it was just a big party. They were pouring $900 champagne for the journalists like it was water. So there, obviously it's the bread and circuses sort of thing. The journalists, it almost felt like we were in the Hunger Games, where we're watching all the people, the poor people in the districts, and we were in the Capitol. And I was asking all the journalists, like, so what are you here to do? And they're like, well, they're going to call us, and when it's time to take a picture of Barack Obama drinking a beer, then we all go and take a picture. And I was like, you're not real journalists. And many of them said, yeah, we know, but we get paid well for it. So then after that, they had the real important meeting, which is called Bilderberg. If anyone hasn't heard of it, that's where the top financial power corporate elites meet.
And
And it
they
was
decide
actually
who the
that.
president's going to be.
What's that?
They decide the president, next
Oh
president.
yeah, no, yeah. The president's almost always decided at this meeting, and it was an hour away from there. So after that, all the journalists left, and we went. It was me and Luke Rudowski of We Are Change, who was amazing, and Dan Dix of Press for Truth. And I was like, I'm going to go with you guys because they always go to Bilderberg, and they always take photos and show people what's happening, and they're the only people there. And I said, I've got some skills of my own, guys. Let's just drive up to the Bilderberg Hotel. I have a way of getting by, and we came up, and there was thousands of cops there, and we still had our G7 badges on as journalists. And the White House press corps was staying in that hotel, and they were scheduled to check out the next day when the Bilderberg meeting started. And I think they assumed we were with the White House press corps. So we go into the hotel. We're the only people there except for the White House press corps. And I sat down with them for hours, and I told them, do you guys know, like, tomorrow starts the real G7 meeting, the real meeting, Bilderberg. They had never heard of it. They actually admitted to us, they said, you guys are the real journalists. We just get paychecks. And it was quite amazing to do that. And we stayed in the hotel, and we got a room, and we stayed until the day before the Bilderberg meeting. And then we were the only three people in the hotel. And then we got a knock on the door from the head of police of Austria. And he said, guys, sorry, you got to go. And I said, well, I paid for my room. What is this? Well, we're here on vacation. We want to enjoy ourselves in beautiful Austria. It's a beautiful hotel. And he kind of smugly smiled. He kind of knew that he goes, we can chase our tail all day long. And I said, well, I paid for the room. And he said, you know what? And the night before, we had this big dinner. We had all these drinks with the White House press corps. It was probably going to rack up to a total bill of 2,000 euros. And he said, you know what? It's all free, but you have to leave right now. And what he also said, which was kind of funny, is because I still put up a fuss. I said, well, I'm going to put a bad review on TripAdvisor. This is very bad. I booked a hotel, and you're throwing me out of the hotel for no reason. And he said, he winked at me, and he said, you know what? Take anything you want from the minibar. So we took everything from the minibar, and he goes, but you have to leave right now. And what we did, and as soon as we left the gates, we saw all the limousines pulling up, and they had all just arrived. Henry Kissinger, all these kind of people. And but we were inside the hotel, and actually Luke and Dan got into the actual conference room. That's the first time that I know of, or they know of, that any independent media has seen the room. And unfortunately, as soon as they walked in, because they were just walking around looking to see what was happening, as soon as they walked into the room, a bunch of guys in black suits with earpieces ran up and said, you got to leave right now. And they couldn't get their camera out, but they did see the room. And so it was kind of interesting to see what's really going on out there. And that's why I went, was to see things with my own eyes, because you hear about the G7, you hear about Bilderberg, you don't know what to think. But I saw it with my own eyes, and it's pretty crazy. G7 is a show. Bilderberg's the real thing, and they don't want anyone around when Bilderberg happens.
Yeah, that's I've been following this every year since I started listening to Alex Jones, and it's just they have their antenna out for anybody from Infowars or Prison Planet TV or anything. So he has trouble getting even close to that anymore. But Luke, he's pretty resourceful. He gets to a lot of places where he's not supposed to be. He's just he must be a quick thinking individual. He's able to and I think that the people that you know, and maybe you're able to help, you two probably make a pretty formidable team against all security people.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I was wearing my suit. I'm a 45-year-old businessman, really, and I've been to a lot of crazy things all over the world, so I know how to act around security and stuff to sort of get by. But you're right, Luke is he's very resourceful, and I don't know how he gets into some of these things sometimes, but he's a quick talker, he's a quick thinker. He knows how to talk to people too. He's never like aggressive with them. He's always just got he usually asks them what's their name first to make it personal. And then he says, well, I'm just here, to take some photos. Surely you have no problem with that. And so he's very smart, and it was really great to see them work. And it was quite an experience to be there. And we had a number of threats. The police came by the hotel numerous times. There was some of the other journalists. There's a few other journalists. There's actually one journalist, Charlie Skelton, I believe his name is, of The Guardian from the UK. Very interesting guy. Like 2 years ago, if you told me anything about Bilderberg, he'd think you're a conspiracy crazy nut. And then he went, I think, last year, and it opened his eyes. And now he's one of the biggest guys really covering it from like a fairly mainstream media. So he was the only mainstream media person we saw.
Guardian?
What's that?
Isn't he from the London Guardian?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That's a huge paper, in case you don't know out there. So yeah, this whole thing is. There have been people that have leaked information about, previous meetings they've had, and Alex Jones somehow got a hold of minutes from the 1980s, the stuff they were talking about, and it's all being rolled out now. They were planning all this 30, 40 years ago, and it took them a long time to get rid of all the resistance to all this action. So it's quite an event, and I apologize for my dogs are howling. Jeff has dogs. He knows how this goes.
Yeah, I think they can hear them. They're outside my door. I put them outside, but I can hear them now howling. So it's dog energy. They're like, yeah, Bilderberg is bad.
Yeah, they understand. They get the negative vibes from that. Yeah, well, I'm sure that if Hillary wasn't there, and I think she was fine. Actually, she violated the Logan Act some years ago and attended a Bilderberg convention when she was a government official, and she got off with a fine when she should have gone to prison. And I think now she just sends representatives, but she may have been there video Skype or somehow spoke to the people at the conference. I'm sure she was involved some way.
Well, when Luke and Dan saw the room, it was all these seats, and they were really adorned with all kinds of drapes and colors, like beautiful seats, not like a cheap seat or anything. And each of them had a microphone in front of them. And the stage there was no podium on the stage. There was just what Luke and Dan described as the biggest flat screen TV they've ever seen. So I think a lot of the sort of the key, I don't think Hillary's even key, but a lot of the people that really like even Rockefeller, who was it? Rockefeller wasn't there. He's like 100 years old. But I think they just come in via Skype.
Close. I don't think he's made it yet. He's like 99. He's going to later this year. He's going to be 100.
Cross your fingers he doesn't make it. But yeah, I think they just come in through a very secure video channel and essentially tell a lot of these people who are pretty big people what they're going to be doing over the next few years.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Hillary is not a big person in their eyes. She's just a Bilderberg meat puppet.
Yeah, just like Obama. He's not a big guy. He just reads off the teleprompters. The real people who control them, you never hear about.
That's right. They don't want anybody to know who they are and what they're doing. That's exactly right. So I haven't got any calls, so I must not have a large audience tonight. No surprise. Cool. We actually get probably 5, depends on the show, between 5 and 10 times the audience from the rebroadcasts, the podcasts, and the YouTube than we do from the live show. That's how
we live in a PDR sort of life now. People don't do things on the exact hour. They watch it when they have time.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it's more convenient for people. Like I said, at work, I never listen to anything that's mainstream media propaganda anymore. I just always there's so many people that have really interesting podcasts. They have I love listening to, well, not every show, but Tom Woods he's about 95% with me. Most of his shows are really interesting. They're short. His terrific guest. You've been a guest on his show.
Yeah, I have. He's a great guy. I really like him.
Yeah, and I think you had him as an Anarchast guest.
I'm trying to think if I did.
I think you had to make a deal with him yet.
Maybe I haven't. How did I not have him on?
Oh, I don't know. He may not be an anarchist, but
I know why. I remember why now.
Isn't one.
Oh no, I have had him on. I did have him on. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've had 240 anarchists on, so it's hard to remember sometimes.
Yeah, and that's I think we had kind of exchanged emails a while back, and I said I'd let you know when I was ready. I think I'm getting pretty close to ready. I mean, I'm working in a fascist state-run liquor store. It's not state-run, but I have token ownership. Um, and I see myself as a spy, as a mole, and so I think I've completely over the whole thing. Um, I'm in it for the money. I'm getting the cash, and I'm blowing town. So
Not a bad plan.
I'm excited whether it's going to be Acapulco or San Miguel de Allende or over in the Caribbean somewhere. But I'm going. Mexico's definitely on my radar. I also, for those of you out there listening, remember we had a guest on. He was the president of Universidad Francisco Marroquin in Guatemala. Amazing guy. Guatemala seems like that's a country that's poised for becoming much more free than anyone could imagine because of all the people that are processing through this university. They're learning Austrian economics. That's required. They're graduating about 3,000 people. Let's see. It's either, I think it's 3,000 a year or 3,000 total student. But anyway, they're graduating thousands of people who have knowledge of Austrian economics. That's got to change a country over time, I would think.
Yeah, I've never been to that university, but I know some people who've been there, and yeah, it's amazing. If I had a kid who wanted to go to university, which I don't really think is a great thing to do, but if you really want to, that would be one of the ones to go to. Yeah, there's lots of stuff happening out there. Guatemala City is about 400 miles from where I live here. And just for people who don't know, at the Dollar Vigilante, just go dollarvigilante.com. We have what we call TDV groups, so the Dollar Vigilante groups all around the world. So for people like you, Chuck, if you get on those groups, we've got, I think, hundreds here in Acapulco who've already moved here. There's dozens in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. There's one in Guatemala City, an amazing guy. He's actually from the U.S. He's a venture capitalist. And a number of people on the group in Guatemala, and we've got them all around the world. So for people looking for options, I would definitely get on there.
I am kind of associated with one of the ones that um, is it Luis? Is that his name?
Luis Fernando?
Yeah,
Yeah, he runs the groups.
and well, he has one that's set up, I think, kind of for the Central America area. That's kind of maybe it's a Facebook page. Maybe I don't understand it completely, but he's an amazing guy. I should have him on the show sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be happy to. He's based out of Dallas still, and he runs the Dollar Vigilante groups. And a very nice guy. Yeah, he'd be very happy to come on. You could even Skype him right now. He'd probably come on.
He probably would. Uh, he seems that way. I've had a couple of short message conversations with him, and he seems like he's also a busy guy. So I appreciate that because I'm a real busy guy these days too. But anyway, let's see. I still have about 50 minutes. I can keep on rattling on, or and if you'd like to stay, you can. If you have things to do, I know you have a family and you have work to do and stuff. So I don't want to take all your time. But I've really
I don't want to just leave you hanging here though either. So yeah, I can do another 15 minutes.
Okay, that'll be the end of the show. But for those of you who are wondering, if you're going to take a vacation, you should use your vacation kind of a dual purpose. You could be scouting out places that you think you might be a good place to settle down or to resettle, to have a vacation home or something like. Last year, I went to Ecuador in April, and I would say that if you're on a limited budget and you really just have like a social security income, which is probably going to vanish, but you could probably get by with a small nest egg in a country like Ecuador because the standard of living is pretty low and things are pretty cheap there. The food and shelter aren't very expensive, so you could probably live for quite a while on a fairly small estate. $100,000 could last you 20 years maybe.
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of places like that. I would say the cheapest place in the Americas that I know of, maybe two, are Nicaragua and Paraguay. There's Colombia is great, but it's growing like crazy. It's a total capitalist paradise right now. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to go do something, I would check out Medellin, Colombia.
Yeah.
If you're looking for cheap, I would go to Nicaragua or Paraguay. If you're looking outside of the Americas, I would look at Cambodia. Is amazing right now. It's getting more expensive every day because it's growing so much. If you're looking at Europe, I would check out Estonia.
Yeah.
Is very good. And I was just in Cyprus last week.
It's centered in Estonia, puts on the investors conference in Panama every year, I think.
Who's that?
He he's he's been on your show. He's been on your anarchist. I can't remember his name. He's from Estonia. And
I,
didn't he have some kind of conference he put on? And maybe it was in Panama, somewhere in Panama. I don't know, a resort. Maybe I got
I'm not
that.
sure, but yeah, there's so many places. Estonia is great. The only thing with Estonia is I'm not sure what's going to happen with this whole Ukraine thing right now, and it's sort of right in the general area there.
Well,
Nothing's safe, nothing's perfect right now.
it's in the region. It's on the Baltic Sea. It's kind of cold there.
Yeah, it's very cold.
Yeah, but it's really close to Finland, which has been historically fairly free for a long time. So if things got bad, you have a bug out route to another country. Um, there's there's a lot of places. There must be 40 countries in the. Well, you said half of the countries you've been to are freer than the United States. But there must be 40 of them that are even more economically. They're growing faster than the United States because the United
Oh,
States is really
absolutely.
shrinking.
Oh, yeah, no, there's so many places. If you're looking for growth, definitely look at Cambodia. Um, Colombia is right near the top of my list right now. I was just in Medellin a few months ago. I was at a bar in Medellin, and a lot of people have this idea Medellin is this drug place where you're going to get killed. Actually, I was hanging out with Pablo Escobar's brother and some of the top political guys, and they're all like, "No, we're capitalists. We're tired of this drug war. We're just going to do capitalism now." And I was at a bar called La Bolsa, which means the market. And all the drinks on the TV screens, they all changed depending on supply and demand. So if a lot of people were ordering
Oh,
champagne,
cool.
champagne would go up in price. If no one was ordering Long Island iced teas or something, it'd go down in price. So you don't see that as much in the US anymore. The US used to be like that, maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. It was more free market, but and there still is places, of course, like that. But yeah, Colombia is great. Trying to think, Chile is pretty good. It's getting really expensive now, though, because it's done so well over the last 10 years. Paraguay is still pretty good. I think that's quite cheap. But the thing that bothers me about Paraguay is the Bush and Margaret Thatcher and all these people are buying tons of land there. So I don't know if they have a little plan to go there after the collapse or something. But I don't want George Bush to be my neighbor. That's my only problem there.
And there's
Uh,
there's a rumor out that Kenny, the guy from Exxon or Enron, excuse me, um, the guy that supposedly died of a heart attack. They didn't really die, and they smuggled him out of the country, and he's living in the Bush estate in Paraguay.
totally possible.
That's good. You never don't put anything past these Bush people. They're pretty horrible people.
Oh yeah, they're one of the worst crime families out there. One of the biggest terrorist organizations is run by essentially the Bush family. It's been going on for decades. I don't know beyond Preston Bush, but he was essentially backing the Nazis during World War II. It's just a heinous terrorist organization. Whenever I fly into Houston, it's called the Bush Family International Airport. I call it the Bush Crime Family International Airport. And yeah, so yeah, but there's lots of places to go. As you pointed
You,
out, I think
you
that's a
haven't
great
mentioned
idea.
you haven't mentioned Panama yet. I think Panama has there's so much income from the canal. There's hardly any taxation there. I think it'd be a good retirement place for a lot of people. There's a lot of expat communities there.
Yeah, Panama can work for some people. My biggest problem with Panama is it's quite tied in with the U.S. government. There is U.S. military people there. There's the IRS has an office there with about 150 people, and they go around to restaurants trying to overhear Americans who might be evading taxes. But that's just in Panama City. The rest of the country's beautiful. There's lots of options.
Yeah.
Almost anywhere is better. So I think, as you pointed out, if you're going to take a vacation, make it sort of a dual purpose vacation. Scope out a few places. Most Americans would be shocked. Whenever I talk to Americans, I say I live in Mexico. They're like, "Oh my God, how are you still alive?" I'm like, "How are you still alive? You live in Chicago."
Uh,
You know, like,
Mexico is a lot safer than most American cities.
yeah, a lot safer. So.
And I don't know if you remember from last September when we had our show. You were in Acapulco and I was in Playa del Carmen, and Drew was up here in Medford, and I was talking about this couple that had a dinner on the beach, and they dug a 2-inch deep trench and strung an extension cord out there and plugged in some special lighting for them. So it made this sheet look like a Mexican flag, which was pretty cool. And they were serving them drinks on the beach. And all of that would have been illegal in America.
Yeah, everything's
That
illegal
for
in the
free.
U.S. Yeah. Yeah, that's most countries are like that. They just they don't have that level of they don't have like a million agencies, alphabet soup agencies, IRS, DEA, ATF, FBI, CIA, always watching over them and making sure they can't do anything without either going to jail or getting extorted for money. So to me, like I know a lot of Mexicans they would never go to the U.S. They think it's way too dangerous to go to the U.S. And to a lot of Americans, that sounds funny, but you just got to get outside like you did and see what's going on. And it's nowhere near like what you see on CNN.
Yeah, and there's some things that are kind of unsettling. I mean, you go through checkpoints once in a while on the highway, and that's around the tourist areas. They don't want to have uh, known criminals come in there, pickpocket gangs and things like that, or just they want to try and keep it cleaned out so the tourists will come in, continually come in. But if you go outside those zones and you happen to stay in a village or something, it's I haven't done that myself, but some of my customers at the store have told me that one woman she worked as a guide at one of the Mayan ruins, and she lived in this little village for 10 years. This is the safest place I've ever lived in my life. I would, in 24 hours a day, I never felt like I had to lock a door or anything. It's just very peaceful, calm place. And
Yeah, when I first
she,
moved to Acapulco, I was sort of like what you're saying. I was kind of like, is this dangerous here? I don't know. I've been hearing all these things, and I met my wife, and she was just my girlfriend at the time, and she left her sunglasses in the car, and I said, like on the dash, and I said to her, "What are you doing?" Because I came from Vancouver, Canada, which is pretty much the petty crime capital of North America, as far as I can tell. Like I don't know anyone from Vancouver who hasn't had their car broken into. So I was like, "What are you doing?" And someone's going to break into our car, and she just looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, "Why would someone do that?" And I'm like, "Oh," and yeah, we rarely lock our doors, even in Acapulco. The CIA calls it the fourth most dangerous city in the world. It's just no problems. It's a lot of propaganda.
so I have this is a surprise question. When are you going to have your wife on Anarchast?
I've been trying to convince her for years.
Tell her I
She
really want to. That's one I would watch over and over again because I think she's got to be the most free, powerful woman in the world.
Yeah, she's one of them, but she's also one of the most private people. She's very private,
Well, that's okay.
and but I've been trying to convince her to. We have Anarcast in Spanish, Anarcast Español, which Luis hosts, and I've been trying to convince her to go at least go on there, or at least host her own show for Mexico, and just say all this stuff. Say let's forget about the U.S., legalize all drugs. Let's make Mexico the freest place in the world. It would overnight become one of the richest countries in the world, but she's
Yes.
very, very private.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of people have. And I guess it's part of that normalcy bias. But I've talked to people up here about we. For a while, we had this dream about having a Jefferson Republic, and they came pretty close. They lost the election 45% to 55%. And I thought the fact that it was within that's really a 6% swing, and they win, and they withdraw. They become still part. They're still part of the United States, but they're kind of an independent republic, like Texas could be if they wanted to be. And and talking to people, trying to convince them, I was trying to explain to them you could actually eliminate all taxation. They said, well, then where would we get? And they couldn't imagine existence without taxes. It says you wouldn't need any of these government programs because there'd be businesses setting up shop here. Every corporation in the world would want to have an office in the state of Jefferson or the Jefferson Republic. They'd all want to be there because they realized they could make money faster than they could anywhere else in the world, and they would become their center of operations. So the lack of taxation is going to lead to your prosperity. Taxation, on the other hand, only leads to your enslavement.
Yeah, I was just in Europe and I met with the president of Liberland. I don't know if you've
Oh yeah,
followed that.
we posted your
Yeah,
story on that. That was really good.
Yeah, and so it's a little 7 square mile area between Serbia and Croatia that neither country says is theirs, and they don't want to say it's theirs for political reasons. So they just went in and said, "Okay, this is a free country, and so we're going to start Lieberland." And they told me, I don't believe them. They said billions and billions of dollars of investment waiting, but I wouldn't doubt it if it was a lot of money. If they can make that its own country and have no real laws except for don't steal, don't kill, and have no taxes and have and no real government bureaucracy, it could turn into Singapore in a matter of a couple of years. So that could happen anywhere. And
Yeah.
so we'll see that somewhere. I'm sorry to hear that the Jefferson Republic didn't work out, but
It's not completely dead yet, but there's a lot of people are they just feel like they can't exist without that safety net underneath them, and they don't realize it's not really there. It's just they just were told it was there, but it's not there.
yeah, it's just an idea. Government doesn't really even exist. It's just an idea. And the meaning of the word government is govern, control. Ment in Spanish is mind. So it comes from Latin, but mind control. And it's just getting people to think they need this big mafia, or else life would be horrible when it's exactly the opposite. If we could get rid of government and taxation and regulation from government so the market can regulate itself, we would see peace and prosperity like we've never known it.
That's exactly the way I see it too. And there's a perfect example. There's a living experiment going on in Hong Kong or Singapore. These are Hong Kong is just a rock in the middle of a bay. They have to import all their water and all their food. Those people are the wealthiest people on the planet. They have the longest life expectancy. They're the most literate. They have highest standard of living. They have the least disease. The best quality food. Why wouldn't you want to copy that?
Yeah, now China's trying to really take it over. That's what those protests were about a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And they really fought it. They did those protests for like a month, people just sitting in the street, blocking traffic, but they eventually gave in. And so now China has more control. And but China as well is not stupid. They don't want to just totally close down Hong Kong because that's where a lot of the money comes through.
It's the goose that lays the golden egg for China.
Yeah, they just want to have more control. So Hong Kong's slowly going down, but it's still nowhere near the U.S.
Yeah, and Hong Kong got that way because it was free.
Absolutely. Singapore, if you looked at it 50 years ago, was a fishing village.
Yeah.
Now you go there and they've got hotels that you wouldn't believe. It's just, swimming pools on the 80th floor.
They have to import all their water.
Yeah, they have nothing. There's nothing there, but they just had some freedom and just boom, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hear some music starting, so our time is up. Jeff, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. And
my pleasure, Jeff.
Really, it's a great conversation, and I hope to see you around someplace soon. Maybe I'll stop by and see you someday soon.
Sounds good. Peace.
Love.
You're bound to break one more time.